everyone. Welcome to the episode of Carolyn Talks. I'm your host, Carolyn Hines. This is the podcast / YouTube channel where I talk to film creatives about their work. And today I am joined by director Nyla Innuksuk, actresses Tasiana Shirley and Nalajoss Ellsworth. And we are going to discuss their new feature film of Slashback. And it is an indigenous sci-fi horror film, and I love it. It's very different because I love how you reference so much, I think, contemporary sci-fi films and horror films, as well as traditional Innuit folk tales and folklore. So, Nyla, can you first tell us about how you came up with the idea for Slashback and using the sci-fi genre to be the story rather than a different genre?
Yeah, I think that the idea kind of came from just my love of movies. When I was a kid, I loved scary movies, in particular Hitchcock, and also Jurassic Park and Goonies and E.T. And those are the kinds of movies that I would make with my friends just for fun when I was a kid. And for me, growing up in Nunavut, where you can have such amazing adventures with your friends, going out on bikes or wandering around town, it was, I thought, just a perfect kind of setting for a movie like this.
And you set it in your home. This is your hometown because it's set in Pannertown, otherwise known as Pang in the film. So talk about choosing that as the location and filming there, because from what I read in the press notes, this is the first film, or first feature film anyway, to be filmed in that location.
Yeah, it was a real challenge to film in Pang. We were actually told by other producers that it was impossible for us to do, and they were basically right. It was very, very hard. But it actually is not my home community. I'm from Nunavut, but from another community called Igloolik, which is also very, very beautiful, looks completely different than Pang. And it was, I got to travel to Pang when I was in my early 20s, making a documentary with the National Film Board about this tradition of square dancing that exists in this community. And then later, my brother ended up with a gal from Pang and having two of the most adorable children on the planet. One of which is an actor in the movie, and so it was really kind of special for me to be making a kids movie for my nephews in this the town where they grew up.
And can you talk about, you had your location, now you needed to find your cast. I actually think I saw the proof of concept short for this film before. If it wasn't this, it was probably the tracer, because I remember one of the girls, the yellow scarf that she wears, that image stuck in my head. I'm like, I saw this, but I saw either the trailer or the proof of concept. So can you talk about finding your cast?
Yeah, we did have this proof of concept that got around. It was a big part of our pitch. And so we showed it at festivals. We showed it to a bunch of different producers, trying to get different partners, financing partners. That was a way for me to trigger financing to get the script developed and to find producing partners. And that was done with the support of the Nunavut Film Commission, and that was really fantastic. And we were able to do kind of a really kind of unique casting process, in the sense that it wasn't formal auditions. It was actually more of a workshop format, an acting workshop with Christine Tutu, who ended up working in our props department, helping us out. And we were workshopping pages of the script and the proof of concept and trying out different girls in different roles. And then, so we filmed this proof of concept. And then once the script was written a couple of years later and we were able to get going, then we started doing casting in earnest to kind of fill out the cast, and some people had aged into different roles. And so that was a a bit of that process, and that's where we found Tasiana. And we were able to, and Frankie, who plays the youngest, who was 8 years old when we started filming the movie. And so that was a really special to kind of to find the rest of our cast. And Frankie is actually the younger sister of Alexis, who plays Jessie, even though she plays Tasiana's younger sister in the movie. And finding her was really funny because I just knocked on Alexis's door to pick her up one day, and Frankie opened the door and she's like, "Hi, I'm Frankie." And then she just started talking and was very confident. And I was already looking for a young actor, so it was great.
And for Tasiana, your character is Micah, and she is. This is an ensemble cast. I wouldn't even say necessarily that lead because you guys all share the same screen time. And Nalajoss, like you were in the proof of concept short. So for the both of you, what was it like being cast for this story and being basically getting to be heroes in the story that's centered around girls? Because all the protagonists are girls, and I think that's amazing because they're not only all girls, but like, as you mentioned, Frankie, she was younger, right? So you get these girls getting to be basically super language to cast and showing like that Inuit culture is for it's empowering for young girls.
Yeah, it was totally amazing. I was so happy to be playing the protagonists, the heroes of the movie, and especially to be able to express my Indigenous identity at the same time as experiencing this amazing like production. I was really so thankful and grateful for the entire experience itself, but also like it was just so like almost epic to watch the filming process and seeing everything go down.
And Nalajoss?
Yeah, the whole thing was just amazing, and to be like one of the main characters in this feature film was amazing. And it was nice because I already like knew the whole cast or most of all the cast, and we all got along. It was just really cool to like see myself on screen and look at me and the other girls on this like actual movie screen and stuff like that.
And so the thing with your characters is that they seem to kind of have a very antagonistic or like kind of like acrimonious relationship at the beginning, and that is something very familiar to me. I have a twin sister and I went to an all-girls secondary school, so like when the dynamic is very familiar. For some people it's like, why do girls like bicker? I'm like, this is what girls do. So can you just talk about those scenes, because it seems like Micah is like bullying Uki a lot, right? And then she does say some hurtful comments, and I will admit, I said like, why is she so hostile? Like this girl is hostile about everything. She is, and she's kind of funny, but it's also like you need to tone it down a bit. So can you talk about just filming those scenes and working through that dynamic as the cast and with Nyla as your director?
Yeah. Totally. I totally find the character of Micah and the character of Oki, they were constantly clashing and colliding with their viewpoints, and they both have such great confidence, and they're both so stubborn that they want to be, the sort of like dominant friends in the friend group, and it's all like a competition for like the attention and who's right and who's the stupid one. But it was really just funny to see it all and to be reading the lines. Like I believe I made a remark about Oki's family and like her drunk grandma, and it was really like I would never say these things in person, but it was also kind of fun to play the role of somebody who was so completely like no filter, like hostile. It was very funny, but yeah, I really enjoyed the different point of view, but yeah, it was just so great to watch it unfold as. Mm-hmm.
Micah has a bit of a chip on her shoulder, and Tasiana is very sweet, and so there is a it's quite a difference.
And for you, Nalajoss, like, because this is your first film role, this is your first acting role, and like I know I imagine sometimes when like Tatiana is delivering these lines and like they are like kind of hurtful and they're kind of mean. What was like? How did you work through that?
I did do some like other smaller acting jobs, but Slashback was my first big major role. I was like, okay, you're gonna act sad, Nalajoss. Gotta think about something sad. And I just like really didn't know what to do. I got some good points from our acting coach, Melissa. But I was like, oh, okay, Nalajoss, you got this. Act sad, or like just act hurt. And I would want to do it again, but I think I did do like an okay job at doing that.
No, you did. I think you did a pretty good job because I tried to imagine who I was at that age, and there were girls that went in school that were mean. And one thing about being around girls, you learn how to survive. You have to learn how to survive working in an environment with girls. And for you, Nyla, can you talk about creating that dynamic as part of the story? Because that the situation between both of these characters actually helps drive the story along, because like they learn that each other more than they appear, especially for Uki, because like she's been underestimated and she does have some insecurities, but this adventure, as we say, actually helped build her self-confidence.
Yeah, and I think that like as women, there's often times that we're underestimated, and it's really frustrating. And there's an anger that can kind of come up, and that when you're being underestimated. And I think that sometimes that kind of comes out in weird ways, and sometimes you take it out on the people you love the most, which when you're 13, 14 is your friends. And I know that for me, that was such an emotional time for me growing up, where my friendships just really were the most important thing to me. But it's also this time where you feel like like the weight of the world is on your shoulders, and there's all this pressure to be figuring out who you are and what you want to be doing with your life. And I think as an Indigenous woman, an Indigenous teenager, there's this added layer of shame in your indigeneity that maybe you have to process and work on to kind of reframe this shame as pride, and certainly working and developing the script with young actors in Hollywood, like we did with these girls. We could just see the ways, just like when I was 13, the same kinds of emotions and feelings and dynamics among friends. You could see that just like kids in Toronto are going through those things and processing them, kids in Nunavut are going through the exact same things. And even if they're going through an alien invasion.
And one of the things that I think the film does discuss in a very subtle way is, well, maybe not so subtle, is how society, especially Western society, kind of makes children, especially children of color and those from ethnic communities, feel insecure about their own background and about their own heritage. And me, I'm from the Caribbean, I'm from Barbados, so like sometimes when you see how the Caribbean and other ethnic cultures, like Indigenous cultures and like from Nunavut and the Innuit cultures are portrayed, you know that Western, especially white media, they don't portray them in the best light all the time. And I kind of got a sense that from Micah, she's kind of like the avatar, you would say, for like a lot of the ideas and feelings that a lot of teenagers growing up today have about the situation, because they think that their hometown, their heritage, is not as good as anywhere else. Because she talks about going to Winnipeg because she believes that Winnipeg is like, like would be so perfect there. But she has no idea of like how racism and xenophobia would affect her when she goes to another town or city. And like, keeping it real, we know like Canada is very racist towards people from Indigenous communities, but she doesn't fully understand that. So talk about that aspect of the story and exploring that with is particularly with young girls. For both of you, for Tasiana and for Nalajoss, I talk about exploring that part of it, especially having your own identity and your own ideas about the story and your own experiences.
Yeah, totally. For me, I related a lot to Micah. Even while filming the movie, I was still like between my younger ages, I was really ashamed of my identity as a you know, like an Innuit girl, and I really was. I grew up wanting to be white, and I grew up wanting to live in the South, like in Ottawa or in Toronto, where I felt like I could live a happier life because I wasn't surrounded by my culture, and I could just pretend to be, you know, white, and I could just erase my Inuk away. But growing up, and especially during this film, I really like learned to embrace my identity and just learn to love who I am, because I do have a beautiful culture, and I'm just so in love with every aspect of it. And I feel like portraying Micah in that way was really important to show girls like me who were very insecure about who they were, and just her growth throughout the movie of learning to love herself as an Indigenous woman.
I think for Oakley, she didn't she didn't exactly embrace her like Inuit identity. She just like it kind of accepted it. She's like, yeah, I'm Inuk, so what? Like she wasn't like quite like Micah. She's like, I like Pang. I don't really care about Winnipeg. I like it here. I think I kind of relate to that. There's some people in like my school who's like Inuk or whatever, like just using like stuff like Inuit identities as an insult. It's just I like who I am. I accept it. I'm not going to make it like my whole like entire personality right now. It's just a part of me.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, this is so great to hear these girls talk like this. It's so you know, when I was certainly I had to go through a process of figuring out my identity, and then there's times where I'm feeling like, am I Inuk enough? Or it's these kinds of things that can get really complicated, and when you're a teenager, it's a hard. You just are kind of wanting to fit in, and talking to the young cast, even in the development phase of the script, I would hear things like them say, "Oh, that's so Inuk. I don't want to wear that. That's so Inuk," and I'd be like, "What does that mean?" And it'd be like, and we'd kind of break it down, and it would and it would essentially just, we started to realize like, oh, we're talking. It's not that it's it's just that there's shame here, and how do we as like a group of young Inuit women working together, how do we empower ourselves and speak with prideful language? And it was such an amazing experience to be with each other and with other Inuit on our crew, and then non-Indigenous crew who were with us, who were really open to learning about where we came from and allowing us opportunities to share. It was a really rewarding experience.
Like something you just said there that really caught my interest. So like they would say that, as the girl said, you say, "Oh, that's so," and you mean it in a negative way. And the funny thing is, like, because like the film does, as I said, talk about white supremacy and the ideas of how like Western are trying to fit into a Western society or a white Western society, and it kind of made me think like how cultural appropriation actually kind of ties into that, because like we see how Indigenous culture and aesthetics and iconography and is appropriated by non-Indigenous people, and then it suddenly turned cool. Like, for goodness sakes, like talking about using an example of Avatar: The Last Airbender, we know that show has like Inuit and other Arctic communities like represented within it, within the art, within the characters themselves and the costuming, and it's fun. It's like it's considered cool. and it is one of the most popular IPs and cartoons ever in existence. And but then to hear that you girls from that very same culture are kind of embarrassed by it, but then you have people cosplaying as the characters based on your culture at like San Diego Comic Con and on TV shows and stuff, and it's just like it kind of shows you like how when these things happen, like people don't think about how it's affecting you. You know, it's just all about them getting the praise and getting the glory to make these things cool. But the people where the cultures where they come from don't see it cool because like society hasn't I guess could say validated your own culture. But then it comes to the point like the girl that you guys in the film say, you know what, we don't really need validation. We got to embrace it for ourselves and embrace it as who we are as a people. So I think that's probably one of my favorite aspects of the film. Just like how it's talking about embracing your culture and your heritage. You don't need anyone to validate you.
Thank you so much.
Right. And speaking about that, so one of the things that the film does, like it is like action. You do have action. And the action happens, which I think is fascinating when like the girls they put on the tattoos. You know, they do the traditional face painting, which is from my research is done usually when there's a transition to womanhood. So talk about that, Nyla, about using that, just like combining that aspect of the culture into an action genre, because you're saying this is the moment where it's start kicking butt and and killing aliens and saving our town.
Yeah, I think tattoos are kind of an interesting part of the film, also just because in Nunavut for Inuit, there was a time where a couple of generations were sent to residential school and essentially kept from speaking their language, practicing their traditions. Things like drum dancing and tattoos and shamanism were rebranded as devil worship, and so it was essentially seen as something really bad to do. And through representation, including by one of our producers, Alethea Arnako-Kirill, who made a really beautiful documentary about Inuit tattoos, there was a realization of what they actually meant, a reclamation of tattoos. And really it was like kind of overnight, Inuit women started getting eyeliner and drawing tattoos on their face and changing the designs. And I think when you talk to most Inuit women, most of them have ideas of the traditional tattoos they would get if they were to get them. It's just something that you think about because they're beautiful, and I mean it is a big step to tattoo your beautiful face, but it's like it also is a special thing for Inuit women, and so to have that be a part of the film and be especially something that gives the girls the confidence to kind of take on this alien invasion and feel like they want to be fighting for this place they're from, I think is really cool.
And you mentioned the documentary. I think I saw that showed, I think, at the 2019 Toronto International Film Festival, or was it 2020? A short film, right?
No, I think what you're talking about is another film by a really amazing filmmaker. I will remember her name, but no, Alethea's film came out about 10 years ago, if not a little bit longer than that, and it's beautiful.
I actually have tattoos by Alethea Arnako-Kirill that mean there's Sedna, goddess of the sea, where she cut off her fingers so Inuit us could have our seals to eat and provide for us. So I have I have these tattoos that
cool. Do you plan to get any more?
I actually don't know. I haven't really thought about it anymore, but it would be cool to get some more Inuit tattoos. I don't know. Just see how it goes.
And that is the perfect segue to my next question, which is the inclusion of Inuit folklore into the story, and combining the horror aspect of Inuit folklore. The stories of I think the character she said Grey Face, that he talked about, and then pardon?
the Kalupilui or Kalupilui. That's what I kind of love is that regionally there's different kinds of names for it, but these different myths and legends that are essentially cautionary tales and also just ways to pass down knowledge, and often they take the form of really terrifying stories, which is also part of the fun. But it's I think that certainly those kinds of mythologies or legends are just something you kind of grow up with in Nunavut. And there's Alexis, who plays Jessie. It didn't end up making. I don't think it made it into the movie, but she was talking about the Mahaha myth that was in the script at one point. This kind of tickle monster, and that was something that her dad had been telling her. So it's it is really nice to have these little moments where these are mentioned, because they are part of conversation. We talk about these things because they're fun to talk about.
I think for most ethnic cultures, a lot of folk tales do tend to be pretty scary, because it's basically just like, as you said, a lot of them are cautionary tales and warnings of just like, don't mess with the wrong thing, you will face consequences. And so I always think that's interesting. Like, no matter around the world, like a lot of cultures have like similar stories with like similar themes and like morals. Like, say, don't mess with the dark side, or if you do, tread lightly. So now I want to talk. I want to know if I'm reading this wrong. So for like the aliens, like they're called skins, and the way how the practical effects are done for the human versions, I was wondering, like, were those a reference to like Jason Voorhees? Because that's all I kept thinking. Like, he looks like Jason. And so I wanted to know about your inspiration from like contemporary horror and sci-fi films and mythology and incorporate it into the story.
Yeah, I think that definitely there's lots of different references from different movies kind of throughout. That was kind of my way into movies, is watching them and just obsessively watching horror movies. So Hitchcock and Birds was, I think, one of the first really scary movies that I ever saw. And kind of made a big impact because I was really young, and it was just like, oh wow, that's cool. I want to try and see more of that. And certainly some of those 70s horror and Leatherface and all of those type. Texas Chainsaw Massacre had some influence on the project, and also just are for me a real kind of it just seemed like a lot of fun to be trying to figure out how to do as much of the effects practically as possible, and getting to work with this amazing contortionist named Troy. His Instagram is at Twisty Troy, and he's amazing, and you can check out his other work. But he can just do crazy things with his body, and so it was like, how do we capture that? And so for our actors that get turned into aliens, building skin suits, and then having Troy and Ophelio figure out, okay, what would an alien move like if it was made up of a bunch of tentacles and embodying a human? And it was really kind of fun to play around with that.
And I spoke a bit about the action. So for you, Nalajoss and Tasiana, what was it like getting to film? Because we talked a bit about the dynamics between the girls, like their whole like acrimonious dynamic, but then there's also the action. You did get to do a bit of action. So what was that like for you?
I did like have some practicing with like some stunts for some parts. I think that was really fun to do because I didn't really get to do a whole lot of like the action side. We did have like a bunch of like stunt doubles and stuff like that. So I did get to do some of the stuff, which was really fun. It felt like it was really fun to do. Like all I could say, it was like so fun just doing like this stuff, the stunts.
Yeah, and you got to choreograph with Alicia, our stunt coordinator, and in particular when Nalajoss gets into her own fight with an alien, and so there was some choreography work that was done, and fighting with a human in a green suit with a puppet on their hand was probably a challenge.
Was there anything that after the film was made and you guys saw it for the first time, that something for all three of you that maybe came as kind of like a revelation for you after you saw the film? Like it was something that you didn't think about before, whether it has to do with the stories or your character arcs, or just like the overall theme of it being a sci-fi. Like for instance, you're just thinking, oh my gosh, I'm finally in a feature film. I'm in a sci-fi. I'm in a genre film, and it's showing at South by Southwest. So, is there anything that once it was finished and you saw it that you were just like, oh my gosh, this thing?
Yeah, this whole entire movie I didn't think was going to be at this potential. I honestly, when I first heard of the whole summary of the movie and being able to audition, I didn't know that it was going to be as big as a movie as it is now. I honestly thought it was just going to be like a small film that was going to be shared within the small town of Iqaluit, and we didn't really like I had no idea, but as I began to learn how much of a big deal it was going to be, and how serious this was, I was actually I put a lot more focus and confidence in trying to learn how to be a better actor and take in as much coaching as I could, just so I can provide the best version of Micah that could be provided.
For me, it was like when I first watched the movie, it was like the special effects. I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is so crazy. Like, to get myself, like, see myself next to like an alien, it just looks so cool and weird. It was like, whoa, I'm in a movie, like a horror sci-fi, or what's it called? Wait, what is it called?
Who knows?
Sci-fi movie. Like, I'm in a sci-fi movie. Like, that's like one of the coolest, like, best experience to be in a movie is like with all these like special effects, and like getting to see the movie after. Like, during the movie, like, you don't really see that much. You're kind of like talking to like this like piece of rubber or something. And then to get like to see like an actual like alien or something like that, it's just blown away.
And for you, Nyla, where you went through, like this film was a challenge to make for you, not only just getting funding and getting it made, but like for you also you had some challenges getting it. So like, what's it like for you now to see the fruits of your labor, as we say, after all of this time, because it did take some time to get it done?
Yeah, it's a really long process. Making movies is really hard. It's a team effort. You're not sure what you're going to necessarily get at the end. My producers and I have been working together on this project for a really long time. I've been working with this cast for a really long time. So it's been a really special experience. It was also my first time directing, so it was a very ambitious project to start with. Now that I know the job, it's kind of like, what the heck was I thinking? But it really was this. It was like lesson after lesson, and we had such an amazing crew who was so experienced and so supportive. My assistant director, Ryan Hyland, and my cinematographer, Guy Godfrey, in particular, were just amazing. And so it was, it was really wonderful. And now that I kind of know what I'm up for, I think that this next project, it's I've got a second script. It's so much simpler. It's unbelievable.
And I think I have time for one more question. So there's something I want to ask you. So the music for this film is very interesting in that you do not only use like traditional and contemporary music, but there is from the first scene, the first sequence is a bike chase scene, and the music that's used, I think, like, I want to commend you and your editors, because I think that the music actually drives that scene very well, and that whole sequence I think is very well done with the music. So talk a bit about the music, and finding the people that you work with, because you're one of them. Is your dad. And he is a drummer, I believe. That's what I read in the first notes. And then you worked with the composer's hallucination. So just talk about finding the musicians to create the sound for this film.
Yeah, the music process was really complicated and really great to kind of figure out. We very early on, before I'd gotten financing for the movie, Hallucination at the time, they were the DJ group was called The Tribe Called Red. They changed their name to Hallucination. They offered their services to do music for this movie because they really liked the idea. Bear's a friend of mine, and it was kind of one of these things that I was like, what? You want to do music for Slashback? Like, absolutely. And I'm just a huge fan of their music, and they do such cool work incorporating Indigenous sounds with very contemporary electronic dance music. And so it was really neat to work with them and be in their studio space, hearing things that they were coming up with. Kim came up with that, what we call the life theme, the theme on the water, with Micah and her father, and that really helped inform some of our other music. We got to work with Tanya Tagak, who's this amazing throat singer who's collaborated with Hallucination before, and she essentially provided all of these test vocals of herself doing really kind of crazy stuff with her voice, doing throat singing, which is a traditional form of Inuit singing. And so her voice helped create the alien sounds. And then we also then brought on Michael Brooks, who's this fantastic composer, Canadian living in LA. And Michael and his assistant worked with Hallucination to essentially merge those elements of a traditional score with the tracks that the original score that Hallucination had created for the film.
I've heard of a Tribe Called Red. I didn't realize that they had changed their name. So yeah, so I love the music for it. The first set of music actually kind of reminds me of the music from the Caribbean. So I thought it was interesting that in the beat.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for speaking with me, and congrats on the film, everyone, and for a successful showing at South by Southwest. Brace yourselves. Festival season is not easy, so drink lots of water to stay hydrated. Again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone for listening to this episode of Carolyn Talks, where I was joined by director and writer Nyla Innuksuk to talk about her new film Slashback, which stars the actresses Tasiana Shirley and Nalajoss Ellsworth, who also joined Nyla to speak to me about their film, which had its premiere at the 2022 South by Southwest Film Festival. You can visit the southbysouthwest.com site to learn more about the film and where you can possibly find screening locations in your neighborhood. And I will also be providing links in the description for the podcast as well. Thank you so much to everyone for listening, and thank you so much to everyone who's joined me for the past 2 years. And for Carolyn Talks, I've had a tremendous time doing all of the interviews for film festivals, doing coverage for Sundance, South by Southwest TIFF, as well as my coverage with the African American Film Critics Association for the Africa Virtual Roundtables. Those have been great. And my other podcast, Here's What Happened with my co-host, Nanisha Campbell, where we talk about all the good things nerdy in TV, manga, books, film. We have such a great time every episode. And also for everyone who's been listening to my podcast, Beyond the Romance, where I talk about Asian dramas, which are also included on my YouTube channel under my name, Carolyn Hines. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at CarrieCNH12, CarrieCNH12. To learn more about me and my work, you'll find my work posted either in my pinned tweets or in my Linktree account posted in my bio. I am a Rotten Tomato approved critic, which means I have work published everywhere online. I have reviews that are posted on the Rotten Tomato site, as well as I cite on various other publication platforms. I've been having a great time. It's hard, but I've been having so much fun. And so again, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and until the next one, please stay safe.